They told the world the Titanic could never sink, and people believed it without hesitation. After all, it was the ultimate symbol of industrial power. Massive, elegant, untouchable. Newspapers praised it, experts trusted it, and passengers boarded it with the calm certainty that nothing could possibly go wrong. But here's the uncomfortable truth most stories skip over. The real danger was never just the iceberg. It was confidence without humility. That same confidence still walks among us nowadays, hiding inside safe careers, flawless technologies, and plans we never bothered to question. On that quiet night, the Titanic didn't just cut through the ocean, it cut through an era's belief system. More than 2,200 people trusted steel more than uncertainty, progress more than caution. And isn't that familiar? People still do this every day. They ignore warning signs, dismiss small risks, and assume tomorrow will behave like yesterday. The iceberg wasn't loud or dramatic, it simply existed. And that's often how life works. The biggest threats don't announce themselves, they wait. This story isn't really about a ship. It's about people and the invisible decisions they make when everything seems under control. It's about how ambition can lift humanity to incredible heights while quietly setting traps beneath its own success. The Titanic was called the ship of dreams, but dreams without awareness can turn fragile very fast. As this journey unfolds, you'll realize this isn't history speaking. It's a mentor whispering through time, asking one simple question: what in your life feels unsinkable right now? But first, be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on the notifications. The Titanic idea behind the ship didn't appear overnight. It rose from an industrial age that believed anything was possible if people worked hard enough. Back then, confidence was in the air, almost like electricity, and progress felt unstoppable, even at night when shipyards glowed with sparks and steel. Wise minds of the era truly believed technology could tame the ocean no matter how wild it seemed. Nowadays it sounds bold, even reckless, but at the time it felt natural, almost inevitable. And that mindset, quietly confident, was already setting the tone for what would come next. The ship was designed as a floating promise, a symbol that people could cross the Atlantic wrapped in comfort, elegance, and certainty. Marble staircases, fine dining, and electric lights weren't just luxuries. They were statements of control over nature itself. Think of it like modern skyscrapers or AI systems nowadays, tools that make us feel untouchable. The mentor's lesson here is simple. Ambition builds wonders, but pride can whisper dangerous lies. When someone believes nothing can go wrong, that's usually when the iceberg is already waiting. There's a practical takeaway hidden here, and it still applies to everyday life. When building a career, a business, or even a personal dream, confidence is fuel, but humility is the compass. It helps to study failures as much as successes. Reading books like The Lean Startup or biographies of great industrial leaders who learned the hard way. The Titanic vision dazzled the world, yet it quietly ignored its own shadows. And as the ship prepared to sail into the unknown night, the next chapter was already forming beneath calm waters. At its core, the Titanic ship was a celebration of industrial brilliance, a showcase of precision, power, and confidence. Every rivet, engine, and corridor told people that human hands could engineer perfection. In that era, control felt absolute, almost comforting, especially during the quiet night hours at sea. Nowadays, we feel something similar when we trust algorithms, machines, or systems we barely understand. Comfort often disguises vulnerability. The illusion begins when success goes unchallenged. Designers trusted materials, managers trusted schedules, and warnings were filtered through optimism. It's a pattern repeated in modern life. Companies that ignore small defects, individuals who skip medical checkups, investors who believe markets only rise. A mentor would gently remind you that strength untested is not strength at all. Real security comes from questioning what seems flawless. There's an actionable insight worth applying right away. Build review systems into your life. Monthly financial check-ins, feedback loops at work, or even personal reflection at the end of each week. These pauses reveal cracks before they widen. The Titanic disaster didn't happen because innovation failed, but because humility lagged behind progress. And once that illusion shattered, deeper truths about inequality and consequence began to surface. When the Titanic voyage finally began, it felt less like a trip and more like a celebration of human achievement. People from every walk of life stepped aboard, carrying dreams packed heavier than their luggage. Wealthy industrial figures toasted to progress, while families chased fresh starts, all under the same glowing lights that softened the night air. There was a shared belief that this ship wasn't just safe, it was destiny in motion. Nowadays, it's easy to forget how powerful that collective optimism must have felt. What makes this moment unforgettable is how ordinary and human it was. Crew members felt pride in serving on an industrial masterpiece, and passengers wrote letters home, confident they'd arrive before the ink dried. It's like boarding a cutting-edge airplane today and trusting every system without a second thought. The mentor's eye sees something deeper here. When people trust systems completely, they often stop asking questions. That calm confidence, while comforting, can quietly dull awareness, especially when warning signs don't fit the happy narrative. There's a lesson worth carrying forward into real life. Whether investing money, choosing a career path, or trusting new technology, it's wise to balance excitement with curiosity. Reading prospectuses, learning basic risk management, or simply asking, "What if?" can change outcomes dramatically. The passengers couldn't see the iceberg waiting beyond the dark horizon, and that's exactly the point. As the ship pressed forward through the night, belief remained strong, unaware that belief alone would soon be tested. Beneath the Titanic grandeur, a quiet division shaped everything. People lived different realities on the same ship, separated by decks, doors, and expectations. While some enjoyed luxury and calm, others navigated narrow corridors, carrying hope rather than comfort. When the iceberg struck in the night, these invisible lines suddenly mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. Nowadays, inequality still works this way, subtle until crisis makes it undeniable. A wise perspective sees how structure influences outcomes. Access to information, proximity to lifeboats, and authority all played silent roles in survival. It's similar to how education, networks, or healthcare shape modern opportunities. The tragedy exposed an uncomfortable truth. Fairness doesn't emerge automatically, it must be designed. When systems ignore this, they amplify harm instead of protecting people. There's a lesson here that can change how one moves through the world. Advocate for inclusive systems, question unfair advantages, and use privilege to open doors for others. Supporting education initiatives, mentoring, or even volunteering time are practical steps. The Titanic story reminds us that shared spaces demand shared responsibility. And as the moral weight of this divide becomes clear, attention shifts toward the extraordinary humanity revealed in the darkest moments. The Titanic tragedy didn't explode into existence, it unfolded step by step. Speed was maintained, warnings were softened, and assumptions replaced verification. Each decision seemed small, almost reasonable, especially in the calm of the night, but together they formed a path no one intended to walk. Nowadays, this is how many failures still happen, quietly, politely, and without drama until it's too late. A wise mentor recognizes this pattern in everyday life. Missed workouts become health issues, delayed conversations become broken relationships, and unchecked risks become losses. Human frailty isn't weakness, it's forgetfulness of consequences. The ship didn't fail because people were evil or careless, but because confidence slowly outpaced caution. That's a subtle danger, and also a very human one. There's a practical habit that counters this perfectly. Slow down key decisions. Use checklists, second opinions, or deliberate pauses before major choices. Pilots and surgeons rely on this for a reason. The Titanic lesson is clear. Small corrections early prevent massive consequences later. And once we understand this chain, another heavy truth appears. Responsibility doesn't end with decisions, it extends into communication. In the Titanic disaster, silence was as deadly as the iceberg itself. Warnings were sent, signals were seen, yet meaning was lost between assumption and hesitation. In the stillness of the night, flares were mistaken for celebration, and urgent messages failed to trigger action. People believed communication existed simply because technology was present. Nowadays, we make the same mistake, confusing connection with understanding. A mentor would pause here and say something important. Responsibility doesn't end when a message is sent. It ends when it is understood and acted upon. Think of workplaces where emails go unread, families where feelings are implied but never spoken, or investments made without fully grasping the risks. The Titanic story teaches that clarity saves lives, while ambiguity costs them. Communication isn't noise, it's care. There's a practical way to live this lesson daily. Confirm understanding, ask follow-up questions, and don't assume silence means agreement. In leadership, repeat critical information. In relationships, say things plainly and kindly. Reading books like Crucial Conversations sharpens the skill. The night exposed how fragile communication can be, and once that weight became clear, the story naturally drifted toward how memory and myth reshape truth over time. That night began quietly, almost politely, as if the ocean itself were holding its breath. The Titanic ship sliced through calm waters, and most people were already asleep, trusting the industrial marvel beneath their feet. Stars filled the sky, the night felt peaceful, and danger seemed like a distant rumor. Then came the iceberg, silent, sudden, and unforgiving. In a matter of moments, certainty cracked, and reality rushed in. What followed wasn't instant panic, but disbelief, which can be more dangerous. Officers hesitated, people questioned what they felt, and some even laughed it off at first. It's a pattern the wise recognize even nowadays. When systems fail, the human mind resists accepting it. Think of financial crashes, health warnings ignored, or alarms we assume are false. By the time action feels urgent, precious minutes are already gone, drifting away into the cold night. There's a powerful, practical lesson hidden in this chaos. When something feels wrong, at work, in relationships, or in life, it's wise to act early, not perfectly. Preparing emergency plans, building savings, or learning basic first aid are small steps that matter when the iceberg appears. The people aboard didn't lack courage, they lacked time and readiness. And as the freezing water rose, the story quietly shifted from confidence to consequence, opening the door to truths that would surface long after the ship vanished. When the Titanic situation turned desperate, something remarkable surfaced in people's behavior. In the freezing night, fear didn't erase dignity, it revealed it. Musicians played as chaos grew, crew members guided strangers, and parents chose love over survival. These moments weren't loud or heroic in a movie sense. They were quiet, human, and deeply powerful. Nowadays, such courage still appears in disasters, reminding us who we can be under pressure. A mentor's eye sees that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but action despite it. Think of healthcare workers during crises, or ordinary people helping strangers after accidents. The lesson is simple but demanding. Character shows up when comfort disappears. The Titanic night stripped away status and wealth, leaving only choices, and those choices became the most enduring part of the story. There's a way to train this muscle before crisis arrives. Small acts of service, emotional resilience training, or even practicing calm decision-making under stress can shape future reactions. Reading stories of moral courage or volunteering builds this inner strength. The iceberg took lives, but it couldn't take humanity. And as courage illuminated the darkness, another truth emerged. the disaster was also a result of many fragile human decisions. The Titanic story draws a clear line between what people build and what nature allows. At the height of industrial confidence, many truly believed the ocean could be negotiated, managed, even subdued. The ship stood as proof that human intelligence could shape steel stronger than waves. Yet all it took was one iceberg, waiting quietly in the night to remind the world who truly sets the rules. Nowadays, that tension still defines our relationship with progress. A wise mentor sees this not as a warning against ambition, but against arrogance. Nature doesn't compete, it simply exists, indifferent to human plans. Think of floods overwhelming cities, markets collapsing despite perfect forecasts, or health failing when routines are ignored. The lesson is balance. Build boldly, but listen carefully. When people respect limits, they make better decisions, both in innovation and in life. There's a practical habit hidden here that anyone can adopt. Before pushing forward, pause and ask, what forces are outside my control? In business, this might mean diversifying income. In health, respecting rest and recovery. Reading books like Thinking in Systems helps train this awareness. The Titanic ambition wasn't wrong, it was incomplete. And that realization gently opens the door to understanding how control itself can be an illusion. When the dust settled, the Titanic tragedy stopped being just a story of loss and became a classroom for humanity. People realized that steel and innovation mean little without responsibility guiding them. Maritime rules changed, lifeboat standards improved, and communication systems were redesigned to prevent silence in the night. Nowadays, many safety laws we take for granted were born from that cold water. Progress, it turns out, often advances on the back of painful lessons. A wise observer notices how this applies far beyond ships. In business, families, or personal growth, systems only work when safeguards exist. Think about building an emergency fund, backing up digital files, or creating health routines before problems appear. These aren't pessimistic acts, they're respectful ones. The iceberg didn't just expose weaknesses in a ship, it revealed gaps in human planning and foresight. The deeper lesson is emotional, not mechanical. The Titanic legacy reminds people that humility strengthens intelligence instead of weakening it. Listening to warnings, inviting criticism, and slowing down can save more than speed ever will. When society embraced these truths, the ocean became slightly safer, but the mind became wiser too. And as these lessons settled into global consciousness, attention naturally drifted toward the human heart of the story, the memories left behind. From the Titanic loss emerged rules written in memory rather than ink alone. Maritime laws evolved, lifeboat counts increased, and communication protocols became stricter, all shaped by the echoes of that night. People realized that safety isn't optional, it's foundational. Nowadays, these protections feel obvious, but they were once painful lessons learned too late. Progress, it seems, listens best after tragedy speaks. A wise mentor sees how systems improve when accountability replaces assumption. These changes weren't about fear, they were about respect for human life. The same principle applies in everyday routines, wearing seatbelts, following health guidelines, or building redundancy into plans. What feels inconvenient today often becomes essential tomorrow. The Titanic legacy quietly protects millions who will never know its name. There's an actionable truth here worth embracing. Review the rules in your own life: finances, health, relationships, and time management. Are they designed for best days or worst ones? Strong systems prepare for storms, not sunshine. And as these lessons reshaped the world, they also pointed inward, toward the Titanic as a mirror of humanity itself. For decades, the Titanic story rested in silence, buried beneath darkness and pressure, while people argued about what really went wrong. Some blamed the iceberg alone, others whispered about flawed materials or industrial shortcuts no one wanted to admit. As years passed, the tragedy turned into myth, polished by distance and emotion. Nowadays, this happens often when time softens facts and replaces them with comfortable explanations. Yet truth, like the ocean, has a way of resurfacing. When explorers finally found the wreck, the night of the disaster felt suddenly close again. Twisted steel, scattered shoes, and personal objects told stories no headline ever could. Experts realized it wasn't one fatal error, but a chain of small decisions stacking quietly on top of each other. This mirrors everyday life more than we'd like to admit, whether in failed projects or broken goals. Big collapses usually begin with tiny compromises no one thinks will matter. Here's the practical wisdom a mentor would pass on. After any failure, it's wise to audit your own decisions without excuses. What was ignored, rushed, or assumed? Journaling, reviewing past choices, or even talking to a trusted mentor can reveal patterns before they repeat. The Titanic wreck taught the world that disasters aren't monsters, they're mosaics, and once those hidden pieces came into view, attention naturally shifted toward what humanity could learn from the depths. When science finally reached the Titanic wreck, emotion met evidence in the cold depths of the ocean. Submersibles illuminated corridors frozen in time, turning legend back into reality. Shoes, dishes, and personal belongings told quieter stories than any film ever could. In the darkness of the deep night, science didn't erase emotion, it deepened it. Nowadays, this blend of technology and empathy defines the best discoveries we make. A mentor would point out that knowledge carries responsibility. Exploring such sites isn't about curiosity alone, but respect. The same applies to data, history, or even personal boundaries. Just because something can be accessed doesn't mean it should be exploited. The Titanic wreck reminded people that progress without reverence feels hollow. Science serves humanity best when it honors what it uncovers. There's a lesson anyone can apply here. Approach learning with humility. Study not only to know, but to understand impact. Whether researching investments, health, or history, ask how knowledge affects others. Books like *Sapiens* help connect facts to meaning. As science mapped the wreck, attention naturally turned toward how this knowledge reshaped laws, habits, and the future itself. After the Titanic vanished beneath the waves, something curious happened. The ship began to live a second life in memory. People retold the story not just to explain the past, but to make sense of themselves. Facts slowly blended with emotion, and emotion with myth, especially as the night of the disaster grew distant. Nowadays, this is how legends are born, not from accuracy alone, but from meaning. What we remember often matters more than what exactly happened. A wise mentor notices how stories shape belief. The Titanic became a symbol of romance, pride, tragedy, and lost innocence, retold in books, films, and conversations. It's similar to how historical figures or major events become simplified icons over time. This isn't deception, it's human nature trying to preserve lessons in a form that survives generations. Myth, when handled carefully, becomes a vessel for truth rather than an enemy of it. There's a practical insight here for everyday life. The stories you tell about your own failures or successes eventually define you. Reframing experiences through journaling, storytelling, or reflection can turn pain into wisdom. Choose narratives that teach instead of trap you. The Titanic legend endured because it spoke to something universal, and as myth solidified, science prepared to descend and confront the reality resting in the deep. With time, the Titanic wreck transformed from twisted metal into a living memory carried by people across generations. What once symbolized industrial pride began to symbolize human vulnerability, love, and loss. Divers descending into the dark speak of an eerie calm, as if the night of the sinking never truly ended. Nowadays, those images still stir something deep inside anyone who sees them. Memory, after all, has a way of keeping emotions afloat long after facts fade. What keeps this legacy alive isn't just history, but empathy. Stories of letters never delivered, parents shielding children, and quiet acts of courage connect past lives to present hearts. It's similar to visiting memorials or reading wartime diaries. Suddenly, numbers become faces. A mentor would say, this is why storytelling matters. It turns lessons into feelings, and feelings into wisdom. Without emotion, knowledge rarely changes behavior. There's a gentle invitation here for everyday life. Preserving family stories, recording elders' memories, or even journaling personal experiences gives meaning to moments before they vanish. The Titanic legacy teaches that what we remember shapes who we become, and as memory deepens into myth, the story begins to stretch beyond emotion toward larger themes that define humanity itself. The Titanic story ultimately turns the lens back on people themselves. Beyond steel and statistics, it reflects pride, love, fear, and resilience, all sharing the same fragile space. The ship became a mirror where humanity saw both its brilliance and its blind spots. In the stillness after the night, the question was no longer about what sank, but about who we are. Nowadays, that reflection feels as relevant as ever. A mentor would say, this is why the story refuses to fade. Every era builds its own unsinkable ideas, technologies, systems, beliefs, and trusts them completely. When they fail, humility arrives uninvited. The Titanic doesn't condemn ambition, it asks for awareness. Wisdom lives in holding confidence and doubt in the same hand. There's a gentle practice that grows from this insight. Regular self-reflection, honest feedback, and learning from history prevent repetition. Reading biographies or studying past collapses trains this mindset. The Titanic wreck rests in silence, but its message keeps speaking. And with that understanding, the journey through the story feels complete, ready to be framed by a beginning that pulls everything together. As the story of the Titanic settles in your mind, one truth rises above the wreckage. Knowledge only matters when it changes how you live. The iceberg wasn't just ice, and the ship wasn't just steel. They were symbols of decisions made, warnings ignored, and confidence left unchecked. So let me ask you something honest. Where in your life are you moving full speed ahead, trusting that nothing can go wrong? Your career, your finances, your health, your relationships. The answers to these questions shape your future more than any storm ever could. Nowadays, you have something the people on that ship didn't: foresight. You can slow down, build safeguards, ask better questions, and choose humility over arrogance. You can study past failures, diversify your plans, prepare for uncertainty, and listen when intuition whispers instead of waiting for it to scream. The Titanic teaches that small adjustments made early can prevent irreversible losses later. The real tragedy isn't failure, it's refusing to learn from it. So here's the invitation. Take one lesson from this story and apply it today. Question something you've been taking for granted. Strengthen a system you've been neglecting. Protect what truly matters. And if this journey gave you clarity, insight, or a new way of seeing the world, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and activate notifications. Stay close because there are many more stories like this, stories that don't just inform, but transform.